Have you ever met someone, and for a moment it felt like time forgot to move? Like their eyes didn't just look at you, they remembered you. There was a quiet trembling in your chest, as if something ancient inside you whispered, "It's you." Maybe it wasn't love at first sight. Maybe it was more like recognition at first soul touch. And then, almost as quickly as they appeared, everything in your life started to unravel, not because they broke you, but because something deeper wanted to wake up inside you. You might be in that space now where nothing makes sense, where love doesn't feel light anymore, where you're asking, why did I meet this person? And somehow, your heart knows that meeting them wasn't an accident. Tonight, we're going to walk together through that strange, beautiful, and painful mystery, how to recognize your soulmate during a spiritual awakening. Not the Hollywood version, not the fairy tale, but the raw, shaking, tender truth of it, the kind that changes you forever. This isn't a story about finding the one. It's about remembering who you are through someone who was never meant to stay hidden from your soul. It's about why some people enter our lives to heal us, even if they break us open in the process. Because sometimes, love doesn't come to make us happy. It comes to make us whole. So, if you've been feeling like your life has been shifting lately, if your dreams are more vivid, your emotions more intense, your intuition louder, it might not be chaos. It might be awakening. And the person you met may be the mirror of your soul, the catalyst for your return to yourself. Take a breath. Let's slow down together. This space is for you, the overthinker, the deep feeler, the one who keeps loving even when it hurts. You don't have to understand everything right now. You just have to feel. As we move through this, stay close. You'll begin to see the quiet signs, the gentle patterns, the ways the universe tries to whisper, this connection is not random. You'll understand why your heart recognized them before your mind did, and by the end, you might just see that this awakening, this unraveling, isn't punishment. It's a sacred reunion. If you've ever felt something that words couldn't hold, if you've ever met someone who felt like home and chaos all at once stay, and if you feel something stir inside you as you listen, that's your soul nodding yes. Before we dive deeper, if you find yourself resonating with this, make sure you're part of this space. Subscribe, stay connected, because somewhere out there, someone else is feeling the same ache, and maybe together, we can turn that ache into light. There's a moment right before you meet them when life begins to feel strangely heavy. You wake up one day realizing that everything you thought you wanted doesn't fit anymore. The job, the routine, even the dreams you once chased, they start to feel like borrowed clothes. It's not depression, not exactly. It's like your soul is whispering, something's coming, be still. And then they appear. Sometimes it's in the most ordinary place, a bookstore, a street corner, an online message that seems too random to mean anything. But the second you meet their eyes, something clicks. You can't explain it, you just know. It's not the dizzying rush of infatuation, it's deeper. It's as if every lifetime you've ever lived folds into this one moment. You don't fall in love, you remember. The first sign of a soulmate during a spiritual awakening is this: recognition without reason. It doesn't make sense, and yet it feels truer than anything that ever has. You might tell yourself it's coincidence, attraction, timing, but deep down your body knows. Your chest tightens, your palms warm, your spirit trembles not from fear, but from remembrance. And from that moment on, your world begins to shift. You start seeing the number 11 everywhere. Songs seem to follow you. Dreams begin to blend with waking life. It's as if the universe is trying to remind you of a conversation you had long before you were born, a promise you made to meet again once you were both ready. But here's what no one tells you. Recognizing your soulmate doesn't always feel like bliss. Sometimes it feels like chaos, disguised as love. Because when two souls meet at that frequency, everything false begins to crumble. You'll feel it first as longing and ache, so deep it feels older than this life. Then confusion, because you can't explain why this person stirs so much in you. And then fear, because somewhere inside, you know this connection will demand your transformation. That's the second sign. Your old self begins to dissolve. The masks you've worn to survive, they start slipping off. The ways you've pretended to be fine, they stop working. And suddenly, this person sees right through you. Not your achievements, not your defense mechanisms. You can't hide. You can't fake it. Their presence feels like standing in front of truth itself. And maybe you fight it. Maybe you try to push them away, tell yourself it's too much, too soon. But no matter what you do, you feel the pull. The invisible thread between you vibrates even when you're miles apart. That's when you begin to understand this isn't just a connection, it's a mirror. They don't come to complete you. They come to reveal you, to show you all the places you've been hiding from love and all the ways you've mistaken fear for safety. And that's why it hurts. The third sign, their love awakens your wounds. You'll notice patterns you thought you'd healed: the abandonment, the jealousy, the silence. You'll feel old emotions surfacing, not to break you, but to free you. They're your triggers, yes, but also your teachers. Sometimes you'll blame them. You'll say, "They made me feel small," or "They confused me." But if you listen closely, you'll realize they didn't create the pain. They just illuminated where it was already living inside you. That's what spiritual awakenings do. They burn. They strip away everything that isn't love until all that's left is truth. And truth can be terrifying because it asks you to stop running. It asks you to face the parts of yourself you've buried. It asks you to love yourself enough to let go of the version of you that only knew survival. Your soulmate, the real kind, the one tied to your awakening, doesn't come to save you. They come to remind you that you are capable of saving yourself. And maybe that's why it feels like they're both heaven and heartbreak, because their purpose isn't to stay forever. It's to awaken the part of you that finally realizes you were never separate from love in the first place. So if you're feeling that ache right now, if someone has stirred something in you that feels too deep to name, don't rush to label it. Don't force it into a story of forever or fate. Just breathe. Let it be sacred without being certain. Because the real recognition of a soulmate isn't found in promises or labels. It's found in the quiet knowing that somehow, this meeting, no matter how brief, no matter how complicated, is changing you in ways words can't hold. And maybe that's exactly what it was meant to do. There's something almost cruel about the way love and awakening intertwine. Just when you think you're finally healing, this person arrives, and suddenly, every wall you built starts to shake. You tell yourself, this can't be right. Love shouldn't hurt. But somewhere beneath the confusion, a softer voice whispers, this isn't pain, it's remembrance. Because the fourth sign that you've met your soulmate during a spiritual awakening is the unraveling of illusion. It's not just about falling in love, it's about falling out of everything false. You begin to notice how much of your love before this was built on fear, the fear of being left, of not being enough, of being too much. You start seeing how often you've chosen comfort over truth, and suddenly you can't anymore. Their presence makes dishonesty impossible. Even silence starts to feel like a lie. You catch yourself saying things you swore you'd never say out loud, admitting truths you didn't know you were hiding. Because something about them feels safe enough to be seen, even in your chaos. But here's the paradox. The safer they make you feel, the more afraid you become. Because when your heart opens that wide, everything you've suppressed rushes out. Grief, longing, anger, old memories, they all surface like ghosts, asking to be freed. You might find yourself crying for no reason, dreaming of things you thought you'd forgotten. Feeling everything too much, too deeply, too fast. It's overwhelming. And yet somewhere in that storm, you realize this is what it means to come alive. The fifth sign, synchronicity follows you like a shadow. You think of them, and they text. You dream of them, and they post something that mirrors your thoughts. The universe begins to play with you, winking through numbers, songs, sudden memories that align perfectly with your emotions. You start to feel that you're being guided, not by logic, but by some invisible current pulling you both toward healing. And yet, not every soulmate stays. That's the hardest part, because sometimes the one who wakes you up is not the one you build a life with. They're the one who hands you back your soul. You'll resist it at first. You'll pray it lasts. You'll bargain with the universe. If this is real, why can't we just stay together? But awakening doesn't answer to comfort. It answers to truth. And the truth is, some souls are meant to meet only long enough to change each other forever. That realization is the sixth sign. Separation becomes sacred. When they leave or when life pulls you apart, it feels unbearable. It's like trying to breathe without lungs. But beneath the pain, something else stirs, a quiet knowing that this ending isn't destruction, it's initiation. You start to notice that even in their absence, they're still with you not as a person, but as a vibration. Their lessons live in your bones. Their love echoes in your silence. You begin to move differently, softer, braver, more awake. You find yourself forgiving things you never thought you could. You start loving yourself in the ways they once loved you. And that's when you realize the truth. They didn't come to complete you. They came to remind you that you were never broken. When Carl Jung spoke of meeting the self through the other, this is what he meant: the kind of love that tears down every illusion until only the essence of your soul remains. The kind of love that feels too big for this world because it wasn't meant to fit inside it. The seventh sign: you begin to awaken not because of them, but because of what they stirred within you. You stop chasing answers. You stop needing validation. You start trusting the rhythm of life even when it's uncertain, even when it hurts. Because you finally understand that love was never meant to be safe. It was meant to be true. And true love, the kind that mirrors your soul, will always demand transformation. It will ask you to release control, to forgive what you can't understand, to stand alone without feeling abandoned, to believe that losing them doesn't mean losing love. Because love isn't what you get from them, it's what you wake up to through them. So if you're listening right now with your heart cracked open and your world still trembling, know this: you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't love too much. You simply met someone who matched the frequency of your becoming, and that meeting was never a mistake. Maybe they were sent to remind you that real love isn't something you find, it's something you remember. And sometimes, the only way to remember who you are is to lose everything you thought love was. There comes a point in the awakening where everything grows quiet. The chaos softens. The longing loses its sharpness. You stop checking your phone for their name. You stop asking the sky for signs. You simply breathe, and that breath feels different, fuller, freer, like it belongs to you again. You realize the storm wasn't meant to destroy you. It was meant to strip away everything that wasn't real. This is the eighth sign: peace after the storm. It doesn't come suddenly. It arrives like dawn, slow, gentle, golden. You start noticing beauty again, not in grand things, but in the smallest moments. The way sunlight dances across your coffee cup, the way a stranger smiles when you hold the door open, the way your own laughter sounds unforced, unguarded. You start to see that the world hasn't changed, but you have. Because the awakening isn't about finding your soulmate out there, it's about finding the divine mirror within. And the one who shook your world was just the doorway. You begin to understand that love doesn't always need presence. Sometimes, love is the invisible thread that keeps you grounded even when they're gone. You sense them in the wind, in music, in the quiet moments when your heart feels both empty and full. That's not obsession. That's resonance, the echo of a connection that transcends physical form. The ninth sign: you begin to live with awareness. Every interaction becomes sacred. You start to feel when something is aligned, when a person, a place, a choice vibrates with truth. You no longer chase what doesn't match your frequency. You no longer confuse love with attachment. You no longer shrink yourself to be chosen. Because awakening teaches you the most painful, liberating truth that what's meant for you doesn't require suffering to stay. And what leaves you is not punishment, but protection. You might still think of them, yes. Sometimes in the middle of the night, when the moon feels too close and your heart too wide. But it's different now. The ache is softer, like a scar you no longer hide. You don't wish to go back. You just whisper a quiet thank you for the way they cracked you open, for the way they mirrored your truth, for the way they helped you return to yourself. That gratitude that's healing, it's the 10th sign. You realize that love doesn't end, it transforms. It shifts from something consuming to something liberating. You start to understand that maybe you were never meant to possess each other, only to awaken each other. And that realization brings a strange, tender kind of peace. You look back and see how far you've come, how you went from chasing connection to becoming it, from begging for love to embodying it, from fearing loneliness to cherishing solitude, from seeking validation to standing tall in your truth. And that's when you begin to live differently. You move through the world not as someone searching, but as someone remembering. You stop waiting for someone to make you feel whole, because wholeness is no longer something you earn, it's something you are. You might meet someone new one day. They might not feel like fire and thunder, they might feel like calm water, like sunlight on your skin, and you'll recognize that as well. Not because they complete you, but because they reflect the peace you found within. That's the quiet miracle of a spiritual awakening. You no longer crave intensity. You crave authenticity. You no longer want to be consumed. You want to be seen. You no longer chase the one who feels like home because you have become your own home. And maybe, if destiny allows, your paths will cross again. Not to repeat the past, but to honor how much you've both grown. And if not, that's okay too, because some souls don't need reunion to remain connected. Sometimes the purest form of love is the one that doesn't need to claim. It simply exists like starlight, like breath, like truth. So if you're listening now, feeling that quiet shift inside that soft relief, after all the tears, you're already stepping into the next chapter. The part where you stop asking why it happened and start trusting that it happened for a reason. You're awakening to love, not as a story, but as a state of being. And that, my friend, is where your soul starts to lead. Because the true purpose of meeting your soulmate during awakening is not to find everlasting romance, it's to remember everlasting love. The kind that doesn't fade when they walk away. The kind that lives inside you whispering, "You are love itself." And once you hear that whisper clearly, you'll never lose it again. There's a tenderness that follows awakening, the kind that doesn't announce itself but lives quietly in your gestures. The way you speak to yourself softens. The way you hold space for others deepens. You begin to understand that love was never meant to be loud. It was meant to be true. And in that stillness, you realize something sacred. The real soulmate was never a person. It was the awakening they carried into your life. At first, that truth feels impossible to accept. You remember the way they smiled, the sound of their laugh, the way time seemed to bend around your conversations. You replay moments like sacred tapes, searching for answers between breaths and glances. But eventually, your heart grows quiet enough to see it clearly. They weren't the destination, they were the doorway. This is where you start to meet yourself, not the version you performed to be loved, but the one who existed before you learned how to hide. And that meeting, though silent, feels more profound than any confession of love ever could. You begin to remember what it means to belong to yourself. You start spending more time in nature. You crave silence more than attention. You begin to notice how your intuition, the voice you once doubted, has become louder, kinder, more precise. You trust it now, because through the pain of losing them, you learn to listen to you. And that's what soul recognition was always meant to do, to turn you inward, not outward. Because your soulmate is not the one who completes you, but the one who shows you the parts you abandoned. They hand you back your pieces, sometimes gently, sometimes through heartbreak, and whisper, take them. They were always yours. That's the 11th sign, integration. You begin to merge all the fragments, the child who longed for love, the adult who feared it, the spirit who's learning to trust it. There's no longer a war inside you, there's harmony. You realize you don't need closure from them because you've already closed the wound within yourself. You stop asking if they'll come back and start asking if you're ready to move forward. And when you do, something miraculous happens. You start to attract differently, not from emptiness, but from fullness. You no longer chase what runs. You no longer settle for half-truths. You no longer confuse attachment for connection. Because once you've tasted soul-level love, you can never go back to pretending. You can't unsee truth. You can't unfeel depth. Every future relationship becomes more honest, more grounded, more real. That's the 12th sign. Your heart becomes your compass. You stop following formulas, timelines, and shoulds. You live by energy now, by how things feel. And that's what makes you magnetic. Not perfection, not effort, but presence. The peace that lives in your eyes becomes the signal for others who are also awakening. You begin to draw in people who meet you in that same frequency. No games, no masks, no power struggles, just soul-level recognition wrapped in gentleness. And maybe one day you'll meet someone who feels familiar again, but this time, it won't shake you apart. It will feel like breathing, like everything you've ever learned about love has finally led you here. They won't rescue you. They won't complete you. They'll simply stand beside you, and together, you'll create love that doesn't hurt to hold. But even if that day hasn't come yet, even if you're still walking alone, know this: you are not behind. You are becoming, and that becoming is sacred. Because the 13th sign, the final one, is this: you realize love was never lost. It just changed form. You start to see love in everything, in laughter, in healing, in the way you keep showing up for life even after it broke you. You realize your awakening was never about finding another person. It was about finding your soul. And once you find that, everything else aligns. So tonight, if your heart still aches a little, if you still think of them with both longing and gratitude, that's okay. It means the story is alive within you, still teaching, still expanding. But you no longer need the story to end a certain way, because you've already received the gift it came to give. You are not who you were when you met them. You are softer, stronger, more aware. You love differently now, not as a seeker, but as a vessel. Not as someone needing love, but as love itself. And that's what your awakening has been leading you toward all along. So breathe. Let this moment settle in your chest. The journey isn't about finding your soulmate. It's about becoming the kind of soul that no longer seeks, only shines. And when you do, love will find you again. Not because you're searching, but because you've remembered who you are. Maybe the greatest act of love is not holding on, but letting go with grace. Not because the connection meant nothing, but because it meant everything. You see now that it was never about them completing you. It was about them awakening the sacred within you, the part that had forgotten how to trust its own light. They were the spark. You are the fire. And now, as the embers of that story glow quietly inside your chest, you can finally whisper, "Thank you." Not with bitterness, not with regret, but with reverence. Because through them, you remembered yourself. You've crossed from needing to knowing, from chasing to choosing, from seeking love to being it. And that's how you recognize your soulmate during a spiritual awakening, not by how long they stay, but by how deeply they change you. Not by the story you create together, but by the truth you uncover within yourself. So as this moment closes, take a breath. Feel the quiet pulse of your own heart. That rhythm, that steady, forgiving beat that's your soul saying, "I'm home." If this touched something in you, if you felt seen, if you felt remembered, stay close. Subscribe so you don't drift away from this space. Because somewhere out there, another soul is awakening right now, wondering if what they're feeling is real. And maybe your voice, your healing will be the light that finds them. Share this if it resonated. Not for numbers, but for connection. Because love, real love, is meant to ripple. Thank you for walking through this with me. You are not alone in your becoming. And this is only the beginning.